Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be sharing the story of a Daleswoman, Hannah Hauxwell. It's an incredible story and I want to share with you. The camera crew expected to film poverty. What they found was a 47-year-old woman who had lived without electricity, running water, or human touch for decades, and didn't know life could be any different. When Too Long a Winter aired in 1973, 21 million people watched, and Hannah Hauxwell discovered she'd been survived what most would call impossible. But before the cameras, before the letters, before Britain fell in love with a woman from the High Pennines, there was just a girl watching everyone live. Hannah Hauxwell was born in 1926 on Low Birk Hatt Farm, 1,100 feet above sea level. In the Yorkshire Dales, it was remote, even by farming standards, no road access, no neighbors within shouting distance, no electricity lines running anywhere near the stone farmhouse that had stood since the 1600th century. A childhood was work, feeding animals before dawn, hauling water from the spring, helping her father with the cattle in winds so strong that knocked children off their feet. The Pennines went picturesque. They were brutal. Winter temperature dropped 20 degrees, minus 20 degrees, snow barred fences, lambs froze in the fields. But there were people, a parent, an uncle, neighbors who would stop by after market day, the postman who came twice in a week, human voices, human warmth that, they start dying. Her father died when Anna was young. Her uncle died shortly after. By her 20s, it was just Anna and her mother. Two women tried to maintain an 80-acre farm that required 3 men's labor. They kept cattle, not many, maybe a dozen at most, just enough to generate minimal income. Anna would milk them by hand every morning in the drafty stone barn, her fingers going numb in the cold. She could carry the milk in heavy pails back to the house. She would skim the cream. She would walk 3 miles to the nearest road to meet the milk truck. Then she'd walk back and start the rest of the day's work. Her mother died in 1958. Anna was 32 years old, and then there was no one. Most people would have sold the farm immediately. The land was worth something, not much, but enough to buy a small house in a village, to start over somewhere with electricity and shopping people. Anna stayed. Not because she loved the isolation, not because she was making money. She wasn't. The farm barely generated £200 a year, roughly 4,000 in today's money. That's what she lived on. For everything: food, clothes, animal feed, repairs. She stayed because it was what she knew, because living felt like admitting defeat, because the farm had been in her family for generations, and abandoning it felt like betraying everyone who had worked the land before her. So Hannah Hauxwell, alone at 32, decided to keep farming. Here is what that meant. Winter. Temperatures inside the farmhouse regularly dropped below freezing. She had no central heating, just a single coal fire in the kitchen that she kept burning constantly because if it went out, restarting it meant an hour of work with frozen fingers. She slept in all her clothes, including a coat. She would wake to find ice on the inside of the windows. Water left in a cup overnight froze solid. Water. There was no running water. Every drop came from a spring 100 yards from the house. In summer, this meant multiple trips, carrying heavy buckets. In winter, this meant breaking through ice, filling buckets with numb hands and carrying them back before they froze again. Washing meant heating water on the stove, a process so time-consuming and fuel expensive that she bathed once a week at most. Food. She had no refrigerator. She grew vegetable in summer and preserved what she could. In winter she lived on potatoes, bread, and whatever meat she could afford, often nothing. Neighbors later recalled that Anna was always thin, always looked thin, tired, always wore the same patched clothes year after year. Animals. The cattle needed feeding twice a day, every day, regardless of weather. Anna would wade through waist-deep snow to reach the barn. She would fork hay from storage hard, physically labor that left her exhausted. She would break ice in the water troughs. She would check for illness, injury, birthing, complication, alone, always alone. Loneliness. This might have been the hardest part. Days would pass without seeing another human being. Weeks in winter, the postman came when roads were passable. Sometimes that meant not for a month. She had no telephone, no radio. It required electricity, no television, just silence, wind, and the sound of her own breathing. She was living conditions that most of Britain thought had vanished a century earlier, and no one knew. In 1972, a young ITV producer named Barry Cockcroft was researching a documentary about rural poverty in northern England. Someone mentioned a woman living alone on a remote Pennine farm in Victorian condition. Cockcroft was skeptical. This was 1972. Britain had the NHS, the welfare state, electrification programs. Surely no one was actually living without basic utility by choice. He drove to Low Birk Hatt Farm to investigate. The farm had no road access. He had to park a mile away and walk across fields. He knocked on a wooden door that looked like it hadn't been painted in decades. Hannah Hauxwell answered. Cockcroft later said the thing he remembered most was her hands red, chapped with scars from barbed wire and work injuries that had never properly healed. She was 46 years old, but looked 60. She was thin, alarmingly thin. Her clothes were patched and repatched. Behind her, he could see the dim interior of a house lit only by daylight and single coal fire. She invited him for a cup of tea. As they talked, Cockcroft realized this wasn't a story about poverty in the way he'd imagined. Hannah wasn't a victim asking for help. She wasn't bitter about the circumstances. She spoke matter-of-factly about her life. The animals needed feeding. The water needed hauling. The work never stopped. She had no idea her life was unusual. Cockcroft asked if he could film a documentary. Hannah agreed, mostly because she was too polite to refuse. Too Long a Winter aired on January 3rd, 1973 at 9 p.m. on ITV. 21 million people watched. The footage was stark. Hannah waking before dawn in a freezing house. Hannah carrying buckets of water to snow. Hannah eating a sparse meal alone at a bare wooden table. Hannah describing in her soft Yorkshire accent that winter was like. Sometimes the snow is so deep you can't get out at all. You just have to wait. There was no music, no narration trying to make the story more dramatic, just Hannah living. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of letters arrived at the farm. People sent money, donation, ranging from a few pounds to hundreds. A local businessman offered to install electricity for free. Others sent clothes, food, parcels, offers of help. The media descended. Newspapers wanted the interview. Other documentaries were commissioned. Hannah appeared on talk show. She was invited to events in London, her first time ever leaving Yorkshire. Britain had fallen in love with Hannah Hauxwell, but not because she was pitiable, because she was dignified. In every interview, she never complained. She never blamed anyone. She never asked for pity. She simply described a life as it was, and the viewers recognized something profound. This was a person who had endured decades of hardship without losing her humanity. She became a symbol of self-sufficiency, of rural resilience, of a disappearing way of life, but also of something deeper, the quiet strength of people who endure without an audience, who keep going, not for recognition, but because their work needs doing. With the donation, Hannah finally installed electricity in 1973. She was 47 years old, so the first time in her life she could flip a switch and have a light. She could have heat without hauling coal constantly. She could have a refrigerator, a radio, a connection to the world. But she didn't dramatically change her lifestyle. The animals still needed feeding. The water still needed hauling. Running water would have required extensive plumbing work she couldn't afford. The isolation remained. More documentary followed. Over the next 2 decades, A Winter Too Many, 1988, Hannah's North Country, 1988. Each one showed an older Hannah still farming, still alone, But now, with electricity and modest improvements, viewers watched her age. They watched the winters take their toll. They watched the struggle with the task that had once been merely difficult, but were now really impossible, nearly impossible. By the early of the 1990s, Hannah was in her mid-60s. A body worn down by decades of brutal physical labor couldn't sustain the work anymore. Cattle needed the strength to manage. Water needed the strength to carry. The farm needed someone younger, stronger. In 1988, Hannah made the decision that everyone had been expecting for years. She would sell the farm and move to a cottage in the village of Cotterstone, about 5 miles away, but a world away in terms of comfort and access. The announcement made national news. The sale of Low Birk Hatt Farm felt like the end of an era, not just for Hannah, but for a way of life that was vanishing from Britain. Small hill farms couldn't compete with industrial agriculture. Younger people went staying in rural areas. The old ways were dying. Hannah moved into a small cottage with a central heating, running water, and a proper bathroom. After 60 years of hauling water and sleeping in her coat, she finally had a comfort. She lived there for another 30 years. In her later years, Hannah became something of a rural celebrity. She wrote books about her life. She traveled, something she'd never imagined doing. She visited the Dales again, this time as a visitor rather than a prisoner of the land. She gave interviews about resilience, about simplicity, about the value of quiet perseverance. She was always uncomfortable with the attention, always insisted she'd just done what needed doing. Hannah Hauxwell died in 2018 at the age of 91. The obituary called her the last of the hill farmers, a symbol of rural Britain, an inspiration to millions. They showed clips from Too Long a Winter, Hannah carrying those buckets of water, feeding those cattle, sitting alone in that cold house. But here is what the obituary often missed. Hannah Hauxwell didn't choose that life out of some romantic attachment to simplicity. She was trapped by circumstance, by poverty, by isolation, by lack of option, by societal expectation that women should maintain family farms even when it destroyed them. Her endurance was inspirational in the way people wanted it to be. It was survival. It was the absence of alternative. It was what happened when someone fell through the crack of the welfare state, when rural isolation meant invisibility, when pride prevented asking for help. What was inspirational was what happened when the cameras finally arrived. Hannah didn't perform suffering for sympathy. She didn't exaggerate her hardship. She simply showed her reality, and that reality was powerful enough to move 21 million people. She didn't ask viewers to pity her. She asked them without ever say it explicitly to see her as a fully human, to recognize that the dignity doesn't require comfort, that the strength doesn't require recognition, that value doesn't require validation. And Britain saw her. The letters, the donation, the electricity installation, this went to charity for a victim. They were a collective acknowledgement. You shouldn't have been invisible. We should have known. We should have cared sooner. Hannah accepted the help gracefully, used it practically, and continued living as she was had, with quiet determination and without complaint. She didn't inspire people by overcoming her circumstances in some dramatic fashion. She inspired them by simply continuing day after day without an audience, without applause, without any assurance that anyone would ever know. For 30 years, Hannah Hauxwell carried water in the freezing cold, not because she wanted to prove something, because the animals needed water, because she needed water, because the work existed and someone had to do it. Most people discovered her in 1973, but she'd been there all along, unseen, unheard, but absolutely present. The documentary didn't make her remarkable, it made her visible. She was 47 when the world finally noticed she'd been surviving the impossible. She was 62 when she finally stopped. She was 91 when she died, having lived 3 decades of a comfort she'd been denied for 6. And this is the extraordinary story of this incredible woman. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.